It was 3:14 a.m. on a Tuesday when the phone rang. It wasn't a soft chime. It was that jarring, abrasive default ringtone that cuts through deep sleep like a serrated knife. I knew who it was before I even fumbled for the device on my nightstand. It was Big Mike, one of our long-haul drivers. "Helen, we got a problem outside of Des Moines." Mike's voice was gravelly, laced with the stress of a man who knows a delay means a docked paycheck. "The reefer unit on the trailer is acting up. The temperature is climbing. I've got $50,000 worth of frozen seafood back here, and if it thaws, it's garbage." I sat up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes, my brain instantly shifting from exhausted daughter to COO mode. "Okay, Mike, don't panic. Pull into the Love's Travel stop at exit 136. I know a mechanic there named Saul who owes me a favor. I'm texting you his personal cell now. Keep the door sealed." I spent the next 45 minutes coordinating a mechanic in Iowa from my bedroom in Ohio, all while my fiancé, barely existent in my life due to my work hours, slept soundly beside me. Once I got the confirmation that the compressor was fixed and the temperature was dropping, I slumped back against the headboard. I checked the company group chat. Nothing. I checked my emails. Nothing. My brother, Kevin, the supposed VP of strategy, had been tagged in the initial alert from the dispatch software 3 hours ago. He hadn't even opened the message. He was likely sleeping off a hangover from whatever club he'd hit on Monday night, using the company credit card. My father, Robert, the CEO, was asleep in his sprawling suburban estate, secure in the knowledge that Helen handles it. That was my title, really. Not chief operating officer, not general manager, just Helen handles it. For 10 years, since I was 22, I had been the grease in the gears of Miller Logistics. I knew every driver's wife's name. I knew which routes had construction delays before the GPS did. I knew how to massage the ego of our biggest client, Eleanor Vance, when a shipment was 20 minutes late. I had built the operational infrastructure from a chaotic mom-and-pop trucking outfit into a regional powerhouse. And what was my salary? It was barely industry standard. "We're putting everything back into the business, honey," Dad would say, clapping a heavy hand on my shoulder. "It's all for the family legacy. One day, this will all be yours and Kevin's." Yours and Kevin's? That "and" did a lot of heavy lifting. Kevin was 25, 7 years my junior. He had a degree in general studies from a party school that took him 6 years to finish. Tuition paid by the company, of course. He drove a company-leased BMW. I drove a 5-year-old Honda Civic because it looked more humble for negotiations. The next morning, I walked into the office at 7:30 a.m., fueled by black coffee and sheer willpower. The office smelled like stale carpet and lemon cleaner. I loved this place, despite everything. I loved the hum of the dispatch radios, the wall of maps, the feeling of solving 1,000 puzzles a day. At 10 a.m., Kevin strolled in. He was wearing a designer hoodie and sunglasses indoors, holding a venti latte. "Rough night?" I asked, not looking up from the spreadsheets. "Brutal," Kevin laughed, dropping into a chair. "But hey, networking, right? Met some crypto guys who might need shipping." "Did you see the alert about Big Mike's truck?" I asked, my voice tight. "Oh, yeah." He waved a dismissive hand. "I saw you replied. Figured you had it covered. You always do. Besides, that's operations stuff. I'm focusing on big picture strategy." Big picture strategy? That was code for scrolling TikTok and looking at NFT prices. At 11 a.m., Dad called an all-hands meeting. He stood at the front of the conference room, beaming. He looked like the picture of a self-made American man. Silver hair, tailored suit, a confident grin that hid a multitude of sins. "Team," Dad announced, his voice booming. "I want to take a moment to recognize some hard work." I straightened up slightly in my chair. Saving the seafood shipment last night had saved the company an insurance claim worth tens of thousands. Maybe, just maybe, he'd acknowledge it. I want to give a shout out to Kevin, Dad said, gesturing to my brother. The room went silent. Even the air conditioning seemed to pause. Kevin has been pushing us to modernize, Dad continued. He suggested we look into blockchain for our supply chain. It's that kind of forward-thinking vision that keeps Miller Logistics alive. There was a polite, confused smattering of applause. Kevin smirked and nodded, accepting the praise for a buzzword he barely understood. I felt a cold stone settle in my stomach. It wasn't just jealousy. It was the realization that in my father's eyes, my 10 years of sweating blood to keep the trucks running was worth less than one sentence of nonsense from his son. I looked at my mother, Linda, sitting in the corner. She gave me a small, tight smile, the kind that says, "Don't make a scene, let the men have their moment." That was the moment I should have walked out. But I didn't. Not yet. I was trapped by a sense of duty, a toxic loyalty ingrained in me since childhood. I was the responsible one, the fixer, the doormat. But the universe has a funny way of forcing your hand when you refuse to move it yourself. A week after the blockchain incident, my parents invited me over for dinner. Sunday dinner was a non-negotiable ritual in the Miller household. It was where business was discussed, guilt was dispensed, and appearances were maintained. The house was immaculate. My mother, Linda, prided herself on her hosting. The roast beef was perfectly cooked, the wine was expensive, bought with the profits I helped generate, and the atmosphere was thick with an unspoken tension. Kevin was there, of course, tapping away on his phone at the table, a breach of etiquette that would have gotten me grounded at his age, but was ignored for him. "Helen, eat some more potatoes," Mom said, pushing the serving bowl toward me. "You look tired. Are you taking care of yourself? A woman needs to look fresh if she wants to keep a man." "I'm fine, Mom," I said, ignoring the jab about my appearance. "Just a busy week. We're renegotiating the contract with Eleanor Vance's retail chain. It's our biggest account." "Ah, yes, Eleanor," Dad said, slicing his beef with surgical precision. "Actually, that brings me to what I wanted to discuss." He put down his knife and fork, wiped his mouth with a linen napkin, and looked at me with that serious CEO expression. "Helen, you've done a tremendous job in operations, really top-notch," he began. The compliment felt slippery, like oil before a spill. "But," he continued, "Kevin is ready to step up. He's 25 now. It's time he took his rightful place in the company structure." "Okay," I said slowly, sensing the trap. "What position? Sales? Or maybe he can shadow the fleet manager?" Dad shook his head. No, that's too low level. Kevin is a Miller. He needs to lead. I'm appointing Kevin as the new CEO effective next month. I'm stepping back to chairman." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. CEO? Dad, Kevin doesn't know how to dispatch a truck. He doesn't know the difference between a bill of lading and a packing slip. You can't be serious. "He learns fast," Mom chimed in, her voice shrill in defense of her baby boy. "He has natural leadership qualities, Helen, just like your father." "I've been the effective CEO for 2 years, Dad," I said, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. "I run the daily operations. I manage the finances. I handle the clients. You promised me. You said the succession plan included me." "And it does," Dad said, looking offended. "We need you, Helen. We need you to support Kevin. In fact, your new title will be Executive Assistant to the CEO. You'll train him, show him the ropes, be his right hand." Executive Assistant? I was being demoted from running the company to being my little brother's secretary? "You want me to report to Kevin?" I asked, the absurdity of it choking me. "It's a vital role, Helen," Dad said, his voice hardening. "Behind every great man is a great woman. That's the natural order of things. You're good at the details. Kevin, Kevin has the vision. He's the face of the company. Clients prefer dealing with a man in charge. It inspires confidence. There it was, the ugly truth laid bare on the dining table alongside the roast beef. It wasn't about competence. It wasn't about revenue. It was about biology. It was about the fact that I was a daughter and Kevin was a son. I refuse, I said. It was the first time I had ever defied him so directly. Dad's face turned a shade of purple I associated with his high blood pressure. Excuse me? I won't do it. I won't report to Kevin. I won't train him to take my job. It's insulting. Don't be selfish, Helen, Mom snapped. This is for the family. Your brother needs this. Why are you so jealous? You should be happy to help him succeed. When he succeeds, we all succeed. Jealous? I laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. Mom, I'm not jealous. I'm qualified. There's a difference. Look, Dad said, slamming his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. This isn't a negotiation. It's a decision. You have two choices. You accept the role, you train your brother, and you keep your salary. Or, he let the threat hang in the air. Or what? I challenged. Or you prove that you don't care about this family, he said, using the ultimate weapon, emotional blackmail. I built this company from nothing. I decide who runs it. If you can't respect my authority, maybe you don't belong there. I looked at Kevin. He hadn't looked up from his phone once. He was smirking. He knew. He had known before I arrived. They had planned this ambush. I felt tears pricking my eyes, not from sadness, but from pure molten anger. I need time to think, I said, standing up. Take the night, Dad said magnanimously, as if he were doing me a favor. But Monday morning, I expect you in Kevin's office, which used to be your office, ready to work. Don't disappoint me, Helen. I walked out of that house feeling like a stranger. The cool night air hit my face, drying the tears I refused to let fall. I drove home in silence, my mind racing. They saw me as a tool, a utility, like a printer or a coffee machine, useful when working, easily rearranged when inconvenient. I looked at the inheritance they always dangled over my head, the promise of one day. It was a lie. It had always been a lie. Kevin was the prince. I was just the steward waiting to be dismissed. But they forgot one thing. A steward holds the keys. A steward knows where the bodies are buried. And this steward was about to stop serving. I didn't quit on Monday. Not yet. I needed a plan. I needed to see just how bad this train wreck was going to be. So I walked into the office, packed my personal items from the corner office with the view, and moved into the small cubicle outside it. The humiliation was visceral. Employees walked by, averting their eyes. They knew what was happening. They respected me, but they feared my father. Kevin's first act as CEO was to redecorate. He spent $15,000 on a custom oak desk and a gaming chair, and another $5,000 on a neon sign for the lobby that said, "Hustle." Then the improvements started. Helen, Kevin said on Wednesday, leaning over my cubicle wall, why do we pay these drivers so much? Big Mike is making almost as much as a junior manager. That's inefficiency. Big Mike has been with us for 12 years, I explained, trying to keep my voice even. He has a perfect safety record. He drives through blizzards. He knows how to fix his own rig. You pay for reliability, Kevin. Nah, Kevin waved his hand. It's gig economy time, sis. I'm implementing a new hiring strategy. We cut the base pay, hire younger guys who are hungry, volume over tenure. You can't do that, I warned. We haul sensitive cargo. Pharmaceuticals, electronics. You need experienced hands. I'm the CEO, Helen. You're the assistant. Just write up the termination slips. My heart hammered against my ribs. I won't fire Mike or the others. Kevin's eyes narrowed. Fine, I'll do it myself. Watch how a real leader makes tough calls. By Friday, 5 of our best senior drivers were gone. In their place, Kevin hired a fleet of contractors he found on Craigslist. They were young, inexperienced, and cheap. Then came the technology. This dispatch software is for dinosaurs, Kevin complained, looking at the robust, expensive system I had implemented. I found this new startup app. It uses AI to optimize routes, and it's 1/10 of the cost. It's a beta version, Kevin, I argued. It hasn't been stress tested for a fleet our size. If the system goes down, we lose track of every truck on the road. You worry too much, he sneered. You're so risk-averse. That's why you're an assistant. Install it. The transition was a disaster. The AI routed a truck carrying chocolate through Arizona in the middle of the day without factoring in cooling breaks. The cargo melted. $8,000 loss. Another truck was sent down a road with a low bridge clearance because the app thought it was a sedan. The roof of the trailer was sheared off. $12,000 damage, plus the driver quit on the spot. Every time a crisis hit, Kevin was unavailable. He was at lunch meetings that lasted 3 hours, or he was in his office playing video games with the door closed. Who had to clean up the mess? Me. I was fielding calls from angry clients, soothing frustrated drivers, and juggling insurance claims. I was working harder as an assistant than I ever did as a COO, but with zero authority. When I tried to show Dad the damage reports, he dismissed me. Growing pains, Helen, he said cheerfully. Kevin is disrupting the model. You have to break a few eggs to make an omelet. Stop being such a negative Nancy. Support your brother. He's losing money, Dad, I insisted, showing him the spreadsheet. We're down 15% in revenue in 2 weeks. It's an investment phase, Dad countered. Besides, Kevin told me he's close to landing a massive deal with a crypto mining farm. Just wait. The gaslighting was suffocating. They were watching the ship sink and calling it a submarine. I started keeping a journal. Every mistake, every dollar lost, every client complaint. I forwarded emails to my private account. I printed out chat logs. My instinct told me I would need ammunition. The atmosphere in the office turned toxic. The remaining old guard employees looked at me with pleading eyes, begging me to intervene. Helen, you gotta talk to him, Martha, our head accountant, whispered to me in the break room. He's trying to use company funds to buy a company condo in Miami. I can't block him much longer. I know, Martha, I whispered back. Just hold the line, document everything. I felt like a ghost in the machine I had built. I walked through the warehouse, running my hand along the racking. I remembered the day we bought this building. I remembered negotiating the lease. I remembered staying up for 3 days straight during the Christmas rush to make sure every package was delivered. And now, hustle flickered in neon pink in the lobby, mocking me. But the breaking point wasn't the money. It wasn't the disrespect. It was the danger. Kevin's negligence was moving from expensive to life-threatening. One afternoon, I overheard Kevin on the phone. Yeah, just bypass the safety check. The client needs it there by 5 p.m. If we're late, we pay a penalty. Just drive. He was ordering a driver to skip a mandatory brake inspection to meet a deadline. I stormed into his office. Are you insane? If those brakes fail on the highway, people die. You cannot order a driver to skip safety protocols. Kevin spun around in his gaming chair. I am the CEO. I give the orders. We need to hit our targets this quarter or Dad will... Look, just get out of my face, Helen. You're just a glorified secretary. Go make me a coffee. I stood there, trembling, not with fear, but with a sudden, icy clarity. This wasn't just a bad job anymore. This was a liability. If I stayed, I was complicit. I didn't make him coffee. I walked back to my desk and started downloading my contact list. Not the company database, my personal contacts. The people I had dined with, the people whose kids' birthdays I knew, the people who trusted Helen Miller, not Miller Logistics. I was preparing to jump ship, but I didn't know the ship was about to explode underneath me. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. It was Eleanor Vance. Eleanor wasn't just a client. She was the matriarch of a retail empire. She was tough, fair, and she didn't suffer fools. We handled her entire supply chain for the Midwest region. It was 40% of our annual revenue. Helen, her voice was dangerously quiet. Where are my vaccines? My stomach dropped. Vaccines? Eleanor, the schedule said generic pharmaceuticals, dry goods. No, she snapped. I sent a revised work order 3 days ago marked urgent refrigerated. It's a specialized shipment of insulin and flu vaccines for the seniors clinics. It cannot sit in a dry van. It needs a reefer unit set to 36 degrees. I frantically typed on my keyboard, accessing the system. I found the work order. It had been flagged in red. And then I saw the user log. K. Miller, approved change. Override, priority, standard. Assigned to, contractor J. Doe, dry van. Kevin had seen the urgent tag, ignored the refrigerated requirement because reefer trucks were more expensive, and assigned it to one of his cheap Craigslist contractors in a standard truck. Eleanor, I said, my voice shaking, let me check the GPS. The truck was in transit. It was 85 degrees outside in Illinois. Inside that metal box, it was probably 100 degrees. The vaccines were cooked. $500,000 in inventory destroyed. And worse, clinics wouldn't get their medicine. It's ruined, Eleanor stated. I can see the tracking. It's in a dry van. You've compromised the health of thousands of people, Helen. I expected this from an amateur, not from you. Eleanor, please let me fix. No, she cut me off. I'm terminating the contract, for cause. Expect a letter from my lawyer regarding damages. Goodbye, Helen. The line went dead. I sat there, the phone receiver feeling heavy as a brick in my hand. 40% of our revenue, gone in 60 seconds. Kevin walked by, whistling. You idiot! I screamed. I didn't mean to. It just erupted from my soul. The entire office stopped. Kevin froze, turning slowly. Excuse me? You put Eleanor Vance's vaccines in a dry van. I stood up, marching toward him. You cheaped out on the truck to save $300, and you just cost us a $5 million contract. She fired us, Kevin. Eleanor is gone. Kevin's face went pale, then red. She can't do that. We have a contract. She terminated for cause, gross negligence. You ignored the refrigeration order. Dad came rushing out of his office. What is this shouting? Helen, control yourself. He lost the Vance account, Dad, I yelled, pointing at Kevin. He destroyed $500,000 of medicine because he didn't read the work order. Dad looked at Kevin. Kevin, the master manipulator, immediately switched tactics. He slumped his shoulders, looking like a kicked puppy. I told Helen to check that order, Kevin lied. His voice wobbled perfectly. I sent her the file. I told her it was tricky. She must have forgotten to switch the truck type. She's been so stressed lately. Maybe she couldn't handle the workload. I gasped. The sheer audacity. You liar. The system log shows your login. You overrode the safety protocols. I gave you my password last week because you said you couldn't access the system, Kevin shouted back, inventing a reality on the spot. Dad, she's trying to frame me because she's jealous. She's been sabotaging me since day one. I looked at my father, the man I had idolized, the man I had worked for my entire adult life. He looked at the logs I was holding up, the hard proof, and then he looked at his son. He chose the lie. Helen, Dad said, his voice cold and disappointed. How could you? Dad, look at the logs. I shoved the paper at him. He smacked it out of my hand. The paper fluttered to the floor. I don't need to look at papers to know my daughter is vindictive, Dad spat. You've been undermining Kevin at every turn. You wanted him to fail. Well, congratulations. You cost us a client. Are you happy now? I stared at him. The noise of the office faded away. All I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. You're firing me? I whispered. I can't have a saboteur in my company, Dad said, straightening his tie. Pack your things, get out, and don't expect a severance package after this stunt. And hand over your keys, Kevin added, a smirk returning to his lips now that he was safe. And your laptop. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was the quiet sound of a tether breaking. The tether that bound me to their approval, their love, their legacy. It was all gone. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. A strange calm washed over me. The snap had happened. I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was a witness to a crime, and I was leaving the crime scene. Fine, I said. My voice was dangerously steady. I walked to my desk. I picked up my purse. I didn't take the laptop. I didn't take the files. I didn't need them. I had everything I needed in my head. You're making a mistake, Robert, I said, calling him by his first name for the first time. Get out, he pointed to the door. I walked to the exit. I passed the hustle sign. I passed the weeping receptionist. I walked out into the parking lot, into the harsh afternoon sun. I sat in my Honda Civic. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I looked at the building one last time. Burn, I whispered. Burn it all down. Then I started the engine. I didn't go home to cry. I went to the nearest office supply store. I bought a printer, a box of file folders, and a whiteboard. They thought they had destroyed me. They thought they had cut off my resources. But they forgot that I was the resource. I wasn't employed. I was just independent. The first 48 hours were a blur of manic energy and crippling fear. I was 32 years old, unemployed for the first time in my life, and my family had effectively disowned me. I sat on the floor of my living room, surrounded by the supplies I had bought. My fiancé, Mark, watched me with concern. Helen, maybe you should take a week, he suggested gently. Rest. I can't rest, Mark, I said, uncapping a marker. If I rest, I start thinking about how my father looked at me. If I think about that, I'll never get up again. I have to move. I wrote on the whiteboard, Phoenix Logistics. It was cheesy, sure, but it felt right. Okay, I said to myself, what do I have? I didn't have trucks. I didn't have a warehouse. I didn't have capital, but I had relationships. I pulled out my personal cell phone. My first call wasn't to a client. It was to Big Mike. Helen, he answered on the second ring. I heard what happened. The guys are furious. Kevin is strutting around like he saved the day, blaming you for the Vance disaster. Mike, I said, cutting to the chase, I'm starting my own brokerage. I don't have trucks yet, but I have a license pending. I need owner-operators who are tired of being treated like garbage. Are you in? There was a silence on the line. Then a chuckle. Helen, I'd drive a wheelbarrow to hell if you were dispatching it. I'm in. And I know 3 other guys who walked out yesterday. We've got our own rigs. Good, I said, writing Fleet 4 trucks on the whiteboard. Sit tight. I'll have loads for you by Monday. My next step was the hardest. Clients. I couldn't legally solicit Miller Logistics active clients. My father would sue me into oblivion for breach of non-compete. Even though I never signed one, he'd find a way to bury me in legal fees. I had to find new blood, or old blood. I remembered a contact, Sarah Jenkins. She ran a mid-sized organic grocery chain. Miller Logistics had turned her down 2 years ago because her volume was too small for Dad's ego. I called her. "Helen Miller?" She sounded surprised. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" "I'm independent now, Sarah. I'm starting a boutique logistics firm. Dedicated service. 24/7 access to me directly. No middleman, no VP of strategy messing up your orders. I recall you needed reliable cold chain transport for your produce." "You remember that?" she asked. "I remember everything," I said. "If you can match the price I'm paying now and guarantee the timing, I'll give you a trial run. 2 loads next week." "Done." I hung up and let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. 2 loads. It wasn't enough to pay rent, but it was a start. For the next month, my dining table was my command center. I worked 18 hours a day. I was the CEO, the dispatcher, the sales rep, and the janitor. I ate ramen noodles while negotiating freight rates. I slept with my phone taped to my hand. I was exhausted, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't drained. Every dollar I made was mine. Every problem I solved was a victory for me, not for the family legacy that rejected me. Meanwhile, through the grapevine of drivers and former colleagues, I heard reports from the empire. It was crumbling. Without me to double-check the paperwork, invoices were being sent out late or with errors. Cash flow was tightening. Kevin had fired the cleaning crew to save money, so the office was filthy. But the biggest news came from the industry chatter. Eleanor Vance hadn't just fired Miller Logistics. She had blacklisted them. She told everyone in her network that Miller was unreliable. One night, 3 weeks in, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Be careful. They're looking for a scapegoat for the IRS audit. M." I stared at the screen. M? Martha? My heart raced. An IRS audit? Dad had always been creative with taxes, using the company to pay for personal vehicles and vacations, but he usually kept it just inside the gray area. If they were being audited now, with Kevin's chaotic spending? I realized then that my fight wasn't over. I had left the building, but the war was coming to me. I looked at my whiteboard. Phoenix Logistics was growing. I had added 2 more clients. I was breaking even. But survival wasn't enough. I needed protection. I called my friend who worked in corporate law. "Hey, Janet, hypothetical question. If a former employer tries to frame a fired employee for financial mismanagement that happened after she left, how does she protect herself?" Janet didn't miss a beat. "She needs receipts, Helen, hard copies, dates, times, and she needs them yesterday." I looked at the text from M again. I needed to meet Martha. I was rising from the ashes, but the fire that burned me was threatening to spread. I had to make sure the wind blew it back toward the house my father built. By month 2, Phoenix Logistics had moved from my dining table to a small, windowless office in an industrial park. It smelled of coffee and diesel fumes, and it was beautiful. I had hired my first employee. Distinct irony intended, it was the receptionist Kevin had made cry. Her name was Lisa. She was organized, sharp, and loyal. "Helen, we just got a request for quote from Greenleaf Distributors," Lisa called out. "That's a big one." "Quote them aggressively," I said, not looking up from my monitor. "I want that lane." My approach was simple. Radical competence. In an industry full of delays and excuses, I offered boring reliability. I didn't promise the moon. I promised the truck would be there at 8 a.m., and it was there at 7:55 a.m. We were growing, slowly but steadily. Meanwhile, the Miller Logistics sinking ship was taking on water faster than I anticipated. I kept tabs on them through social media. Kevin was posting frantically on LinkedIn about disrupting the industry and leadership mindsets, but his Instagram stories told a different tale. He was in Vegas on a Tuesday. He was buying bottle service. How is he paying for this? I wondered. The company lost its biggest client. Revenue must be down 40%. The answer came in the form of a distraught driver named Sam who showed up at my new office door one rainy afternoon. Sam used to drive for Dad. "Helen, can you hire me?" Sam asked, wringing his baseball cap in his hands. "I can't stay there." "What happened, Sam?" "Checks are bouncing," he whispered. "Last pay period, 3 guys didn't get paid. Kevin said it was a banking glitch. Then he told us we had to wait 2 weeks." "I got a mortgage, Helen. I can't wait." Bouncing checks? I felt a chill. That was the death knell of a trucking company. Drivers talk. Once the word gets out that you don't pay, no one will haul for you. "And it's not just that," Sam continued, lowering his voice. "He's selling the equipment. He sold 5 trailers last week to a liquidator for cash, way below market value. Selling assets to cover payroll, they were cannibalizing the company." "You're hired, Sam," I said immediately. "Start Monday." That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. I should have felt triumphant. My competition was destroying itself, but I felt a strange sadness. My father had spent 30 years building that company. It was his life's work. And he was letting his arrogance and his spoiled son dismantle it brick by brick, just to prove a point. But the sadness turned to cold resolve when I saw the reviews online. Miller Logistics' Google rating had plummeted to 1.8 stars. Items lost, rude customer service, owner yelled at me on the phone. And then I saw a review that made my blood run cold. "Do not do business. They are holding my cargo hostage, demanding extra fees. This is extortion." Kevin was holding freight hostage? That was illegal. That was federal crime territory. I realized Kevin wasn't just incompetent. He was dangerous. And Dad was either too blind to see it or too proud to stop it. The next morning, I got a call that changed everything. It was Eleanor Vance. "Helen," she said. No pleasantries. "I hear you have your own shop now." "I do, Eleanor. Small but functional." "Good, because I'm in a bind. I have a massive holiday shipment coming into the port. I need 20 trucks, and I need them to not screw it up. My current provider is overwhelmed." "I can handle 10 trucks, Eleanor," I said honestly. "I won't lie and say 20 if I can't guarantee it." Silence. Then a warmth in her voice I hadn't heard before. "That honesty is why I liked you, Helen. You never oversold. Fine, take the 10. If you handle this well, we'll talk about a permanent contract." This was it, the break I needed. If I landed Eleanor back, even partially, Phoenix Logistics would be put on the map. We executed flawlessly. I drove one of the pilot cars myself. I didn't sleep for 3 days. Every pallet arrived on time, at temperature, in perfect condition. When the invoice cleared, I looked at my bank account. For the first time, the number had a comma that made me feel safe. I was winning. But winning draws attention. 2 days later, my mom called. I hadn't spoken to her in 3 months. "Helen," her voice was sweet, trembling slightly. "Hello, Mom. How are you? We miss you. Sunday dinner just isn't the same without you." "I'm busy, Mom. What do you want?" "Your father. He's been under so much stress. His blood pressure is up. Kevin is working so hard, but the market is just tough right now." Mom cut to the chase. "We heard you're working with Eleanor again," she said, her tone hardening slightly. That's your father's client, Helen." "It's not right. You stealing from your family." "Eleanor called me, Mom. She fired you, remember?" "Well, your father thinks if you have overflow, maybe you could subcontract some of that work back to Miller Logistics just to help out for the sake of the family. We have trucks sitting idle." I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. "Let me get this straight. You kicked me out, you slandered me, and now you want me to hire you? You want me to give charity to the company that fired me?" "It's not charity," she snapped. "It's loyalty. We raised you. We gave you everything. You gave me a desk and a demotion. No, Mom, I won't subcontract to Miller. Your safety rating is tanked and your checks bounce. You're a liability. You ungrateful little—" I hung up. My hand was shaking. Not from fear, but from adrenaline. I had said no. I had drawn a boundary. But as I placed the phone down, I looked at the calendar. It was almost the end of the fiscal year. That text message from M came back to me. IRS audit. If Dad was desperate enough to have Mom call me for scraps, they were in deeper trouble than just lost clients. They were drowning. And drowning people panic. I needed to meet Martha. I needed to know what they were going to do when the water finally went over their heads, because I knew my family. They wouldn't just drown. They would try to pull me down with them to use as a raft. I met Martha at a diner 2 towns over, a place with greasy spoons and sticky laminate tables where no one from the logistics world would ever be seen. Martha looked 10 years older than the last time I saw her. Her gray hair was fraying, and she had dark circles under her eyes. She clutched her handbag like it contained nuclear codes. "Thanks for coming, Helen," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. She pushed a heavy manila envelope across the table. "What is this, Martha?" "Insurance," she said, "for you and for me." I opened the envelope. Inside were copies of bank statements, emails, and a document I had completely forgotten about. "Look at the 3rd page," Martha instructed. I pulled it out. It was my original employment contract from 10 years ago, signed by my father. Clause 14B, upon completion of 10 consecutive years of service, the employee, Helen Miller, shall be granted a 20% equity stake in Miller Logistics LLC as a performance bonus. I stared at the date. I had started on June 1st. I was fired on May 24th, 1 week before my 10-year anniversary. "He knew," I whispered. "He didn't just fire me because of the vaccines. He fired me to stop the equity transfer." "Exactly," Martha nodded grimly. "The company was valued at $10 million last year. That 20% is worth $2 million. Robert knew he couldn't afford to give you that, not with the way Kevin spends money. So they manufactured a crisis to get you out for cause before the date hit." My blood ran cold. It wasn't just sexism. It was theft. Calculated, malicious theft. "But there's more," Martha said, tapping the bank statements. "Look at the withdrawals." I scanned the rows. Crypto Exchange Ltd., $50,000. Luxury Motors, $12,000. DraftKings, $5,000. "Kevin is using the operating account as his personal piggy bank," Martha explained. "I tried to stop him. I refused to sign the checks. So Robert removed my signature authority. He gave it to Kevin. Dad knows? Robert signs off on it. He calls it executive compensation. But Helen, they haven't paid payroll taxes in 3 months. They're using the tax money to cover Kevin's losses." "That's federal fraud," I said, horrified. "That's prison time." "That's why I'm here." Martha's eyes filled with tears. "I'm retiring. I'm leaving next week. But I know they're going to try to pin this on me or on you. They're already rewriting the books to make it look like the financial irregularities started when you were COO. What? I heard Kevin talking to a lawyer, a shady one. They want to sue you, Helen. They want to claim you embezzled money, and that's why the company is failing. They want to use the lawsuit to void your contract and explain the missing cash to the IRS. I felt a wave of nausea. They weren't just content with firing me. They wanted to destroy me. They wanted to frame me for their crimes. "Why are you giving me this?" I asked Martha. "Because you were the only one who ever thanked me," she said simply. "And because I hate seeing bullies win. Take these copies. I have the originals in a safe deposit box." If they come for you, use them. I drove home with the envelope on the passenger seat. It felt radioactive. I had the receipts, the custody of the truth. I called my lawyer, Janet, immediately. I have something you need to see, I said. It's about the inheritance I was promised and the salary theft I didn't even know happened. Bring it in, Janet said. Helen, if this is what you say it is, this isn't a civil dispute anymore. This is war. That night, I sat in my apartment looking at the contract, 20% equity. They stole $2 million from me. They stole my youth, my labor, and now they wanted to steal my freedom. I remembered the text thumbnail of my life. Women support, men lead. No, not anymore. I wasn't going to wait for them to sue me. I was going to strike first, but before I could file the paperwork, my phone rang. It was Dad. It was 9 p.m. on a Friday. Helen? His voice was slurred. He was drunk. He never drank on weekdays. What do you want, Robert? Don't call me that, he snapped, then softened. I'm your father. Listen, we need to talk. We need to settle this thing. Settle what? The animosity. Kevin is overwhelmed. He's young. He needs guidance. I was thinking, maybe you come back, not as an assistant, as a consultant. We can work something out. He was scared. He must have seen the tax notices. He needed the one person who knew how to fix the books. He needed the scapegoat back in the pen. You want me to come back? I asked, my voice deceptively calm. Yes, we're family, Helen. Family helps each other. I'm willing to overlook your outburst. I'm willing to let you come home. The arrogance. Even when begging, he sounded like he was granting a pardon. I looked at the envelope from Martha. I'll think about it, I lied. Let's meet Monday. Good girl, he said. Good girl. He hung up, thinking he had won, thinking he had manipulated me back into submission. He didn't know that on Monday, I wasn't bringing a resume. I was bringing a subpoena. The weekend passed in a slow, agonizing crawl. I spent it with Janet, my lawyer, and a forensic accountant she brought in. We went through Martha's documents line by line. This is a slam dunk for breach of contract, Janet said, highlighting the equity clause. But the tax fraud. Helen, your father is looking at serious jail time. Are you ready for that? Once we file this, there is no going back. You will be the daughter who put her father in prison. I looked at the records of Kevin buying a $50,000 watch with money that should have paid for driver's health insurance. I looked at the emails where Dad called me the mule to his friends. He put himself in prison, I said. I'm just turning on the lights. Monday morning came. I dressed not in my usual practical office wear, but in a sharp navy blue power suit. I wore heels that clicked loudly on the pavement. I drove my Honda Civic to the old office, but parked in the visitor spot. I walked into the lobby. The Hustle neon sign was flickering, half burnt out. The receptionist, Lisa's replacement, was chewing gum and didn't even look up. I'm here to see Robert, I said. He's in a meeting with Kevin. Do you have an appointment? Tell him Helen is here. She buzzed the back. A moment later, the door flew open. Dad stood there, looking disheveled. His tie was loose, his eyes red-rimmed. Helen, come in, he ushered me into his office. Kevin was there, sitting in my old chair, feet on the desk. He looked thinner, sweatier. The stress was eating him alive. So, Kevin said, not standing up, the prodigal sister returns. Dad said you're ready to apologize and get back to work. I stood in the center of the room. I didn't sit. I'm not here to apologize, Kevin. I'm here to negotiate. Negotiate? Dad laughed nervously. Helen, we're offering you a job, a generous salary. $60,000 a year to help Kevin with the administrative burden. $60,000? That was less than I made 5 years ago. My rate is $500 an hour, I said calmly, prepaid, minimum retainer of $20,000. Are you crazy? Kevin shouted, slamming his feet onto the floor. Who do you think you are? I'm the owner of Phoenix Logistics, I said, a company that is profitable, solvent, and hasn't lost a single client, unlike this place. We're doing fine, Kevin lied. I know about the tax lien, Kevin. I dropped the bomb. Silence sucked the air out of the room. Dad went pale. How do you know that? Dad, it's public record once they file it, Dad. But I know more. I know about the crypto losses. I know about the payroll fraud. And I know about my 20% equity. Dad's eyes narrowed. The good father mask slipped off entirely. You've been spying on us, he hissed. You ungrateful little witch. You think you can blackmail me? It's not blackmail. It's leverage. I should have fired you years ago, Kevin spat. You were always a leech. You did fire me, I reminded him, and that was your mistake. Because when you fired me, you triggered the severance clause you forgot about, and since you didn't pay it, you're in breach. We don't have money for you, Helen, Dad shouted, slamming his fist on the desk. The company is bleeding. If you want money, come back and help us fix it. Then maybe I'll put you back in the will. The will? I laughed. Dad, there's nothing left to inherit. You've let Kevin burn it all. You listen to me. Dad stood up, looming over me, using his physical size to intimidate me like he did when I was a teenager. You will walk out of here. You will come back tomorrow at 8 a.m. and you will work for free until this mess is fixed. Or I will ruin you. I will tell every client in town that you stole from us. I will sue you for trade secrets. I will bury you in legal fees until you're living in your car. He was threatening me with the exact plan Martha had warned me about. I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw the fear behind the rage. He was a drowning man trying to stand on my head to breathe. I reached into my bag. I expected you to say that. I pulled out a thick blue folder. What is that? Kevin asked. This, I said, sliding it onto the desk, is a lawsuit, filing for wrongful termination, breach of contract, unpaid wages, and fraud. And attached to it is a whistleblower report to the IRS regarding your payroll taxes. Dad stared at the folder like it was a bomb. You wouldn't? He whispered. We're family. You stopped being family when you chose a slogan on a hoodie over the daughter who built your foundation, I said. See you in court. I turned around and walked out. Helen, come back here, Dad screamed. Helen! I walked through the lobby. I walked past the flickering hustle sign. I walked out to my car. My hands were shaking, but this time it was from relief. It was done. The bridge wasn't just burned, I had blown it up. I sat in my car and texted Janet. File it. I thought that was the end. I thought the legal battle would be the climax, but I was wrong, because desperate men do dangerous things, and Kevin wasn't just going to let me walk away with the receipts. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I saw Kevin running to his car. He was following me. I watched in my rearview mirror as Kevin's white BMW aggressively weaved through traffic, closing the gap between us. He wasn't just following me, he was hunting me. His high beams flashed frantically, blinding me in the dimming evening light. My heart hammered against my ribs, not out of fear for myself, but out of sheer disbelief at his stupidity. He was chasing a woman he had just threatened in a company car while his license was likely suspended from a DUI he thought Mom and Dad didn't know about. I didn't drive home. I wasn't going to lead him to my sanctuary. Instead, I turned onto the highway, heading toward the police precinct 3 exits down. Kevin pulled up alongside me, his window rolled down. He was screaming something, his face contorted with a rage that looked demonic. He swerved toward my Honda, trying to intimidate me into pulling over. "You wanna play, Kevin?" I whispered, gripping the wheel. "Let's play." I tapped my Bluetooth. "Siri, call 911. 911, what is your emergency?" "I am being pursued by an aggressive driver in a white BMW, license plate Miller 1. He is swerving into my lane and attempting to run me off the road on I-71 South. I fear for my life." I stayed on the line, giving them updates. 2 miles later, blue and red lights washed over the highway. A state trooper merged from the median. I pulled into the slow lane. Kevin, in his arrogance or blindness, didn't see the cop until it was too late. He tried to brake, but he was going 90. I watched as the trooper pulled him over. I didn't stop. I kept driving, watching the flashing lights fade in my mirror. It was a poetic image. My brother, the CEO, detained on the side of the road while I drove toward freedom. When I finally got home, I collapsed onto the sofa. The adrenaline crash was brutal. I was shaking. My own brother tried to run me off the road because I dared to ask for what was mine. My phone buzzed. It was Eleanor Vance. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. "Hello, Eleanor." "Helen." Her voice was crisp, cutting through the fog in my brain. "I just got off the phone with your father. He called me in a panic, rambling about you stealing data and how he was going to sue you." My stomach dropped. "Eleanor, I can explain. I didn't steal." "Stop," she interrupted. "I know a desperate man when I hear one. He sounded unhinged. He told me if I stayed with Phoenix Logistics, I would be named as a co-conspirator in a theft lawsuit." "He threatened you?" I asked, horrified. Dad was digging his grave faster than I could hold the shovel. "He tried to," Eleanor corrected. "Nobody threatens me, Helen, especially not a man who can't even keep his own books straight. I told him that if he contacts me again, my legal team will file a harassment suit so large his grandchildren will be paying it off." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "However," Eleanor continued, her tone softening, "it made me realize something. You are the only person in that family with a spine. I'm tired of the drama. I want stability. I'm sending over the exclusive contract for the entire Midwest region. It's yours, Helen. All of it. $5 million a year." I froze. Tears welled up in my eyes. "Eleanor, thank you. You won't regret this." "I know I won't. Oh, and Helen, make them pay. For all of us women who had to work twice as hard to get half as far." She hung up. I sat there in the silence of my apartment, the contract hitting my inbox with a soft ping. I had just landed the deal that built my father's empire, and I had done it while he was trying to destroy me. But the victory was short-lived. The next morning, I woke up to a notification from my bank. Account frozen. I logged in frantically. My personal checking, my savings, even the new business account for Phoenix Logistics, all frozen. I called the bank immediately. "This is a mistake. Why are my funds locked?" We received a court order regarding a pending litigation involving intellectual property theft and embezzlement. The monotone voice on the other end said, "Miller Logistics versus Helen Miller. A temporary restraining order on assets has been granted." They had found a judge. They had frozen my money. They were trying to starve me out before we even got to court. I couldn't pay my drivers. I couldn't buy fuel. I couldn't fulfill Eleanor's first order. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced my chest. This was their strategy. They knew they would lose in the long run, so they were trying to kill my business in the short run. I called Janet, my lawyer. "They froze everything, Janet. How can they do this without a hearing?" "They filed an emergency ex parte motion," Janet explained, her voice tight. "They claimed you were a flight risk and were moving stolen funds offshore. It's a lie, but it buys them 72 hours. Helen, we need to go to court, now, and we need to drop the nuclear bomb. Do it, I said. No more mercy. I hung up and looked at my empty fridge. I had $40 in cash in my wallet. I had a multi-million-dollar contract in my email and no way to put gas in my car. But I wasn't the scared little girl anymore. I called Big Mike. Mike, I have a problem. The bank froze the accounts for a few days. Dad is playing dirty. I can't pay you until Friday. There was a silence on the line. I prepared myself for him to quit. Helen, Mike said, his voice gruff, do we have fuel in the tanks? Yes. Then we roll. You pay us when you kill the beast. We ain't driving for the money this week, boss. We're driving for you, and we're driving to see Kevin lose. I cried then, ugly, heaving sobs. My family, my blood family, was trying to starve me. My chosen family, a group of truck drivers, was carrying me on their backs. Thank you, Mike, I whispered. We roll. The next 3 days were a masterclass in psychological warfare. Dad and Kevin didn't just stop at the bank accounts. They launched a smear campaign that was breathtaking in its cruelty. They sent emails to every vendor in the tri-state area claiming I was under criminal investigation for fraud. They posted on industry message boards warning drivers that Phoenix Logistics was a scam operation. My mother, Linda, played her part too. She called my fiancé, Mark. Mark, honey, she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. We're so worried about Helen. She's having a mental breakdown. She's stealing money, making up stories. We think she needs professional help. You shouldn't let her near your finances. Maybe you should reconsider the wedding until she gets well. Mark put the phone on speaker so I could hear. He looked at me, his jaw set. Linda, Mark said, his voice cold. The only person Helen is stealing from is your delusions. Don't call this number again unless it's to apologize. He hugged me. They are terrified of you, Helen. This is what extinction looks like. But the attacks were taking a toll. 2 of my new clients called to cancel, cited concerning rumors. I spent hours on the phone, reassuring them, showing them my clean records, fighting to keep my reputation alive. Then came the summons. I was served papers to appear for a deposition at their lawyer's office. They wanted to interrogate me, rattle me, force me to admit to crimes I didn't commit. The morning of the deposition, I dressed in black. Not morning black, armor black. Janet met me outside the glass skyscraper. Ready? I was born ready. We walked into the conference room. It smelled of expensive leather and intimidation. Dad sat at the head of the table, looking haggard but defiant. Kevin was next to him, tapping his foot nervously, refusing to make eye contact. Their lawyer, a slick man named Mr. Sterling, who was known for being a shark, gave me a predatory smile. Miss Miller, Sterling began as soon as the camera started recording, let's cut the chase. You stole the client list. You stole proprietary pricing algorithms, and you diverted company funds to set up your shell company. Admit it, and maybe your father will be merciful enough to not press criminal charges. I sat perfectly still. I looked at Dad. He looked away. Mr. Sterling, I said, my voice steady, I didn't steal a list. I built the list. The clients followed me because they trust me. And as for diverting funds, that's an interesting accusation. We have proof, Kevin blurted out. We have the bank transfers. Do you? Janet interjected, sliding a heavy binder across the polished table. Because we have proof too. Sterling opened the binder. He glanced at the first page, then the second. His smile faltered. What is this? Sterling asked. That, I pointed, is a forensic accounting of Miller Logistics for the last 24 months. It shows $450,000 diverted to crypto wallets registered to Kevin Miller. It shows $120,000 spent on luxury lease payments for cars not used for business. And most importantly, it shows the non-payment of federal payroll taxes for 3 quarters. The room went silent. The air conditioner hum sounded like a jet engine. Sterling looked at Dad. "Robert, is this true?" It's a fabrication," Dad stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. "She forged it." "These are bank-certified copies," Janice said calmly, "and the whistleblower report attached at the back, that was sent to the IRS 4 days ago. The audit notice you received yesterday, that was us." Kevin turned white. "You sent it to the IRS?" "I had to," I said, locking eyes with my brother. As a former officer of the company, I had a legal obligation to report fraud. Unlike you, I don't plan on going to jail. Sterling closed the binder. He took off his glasses. He looked at his clients with a mixture of disgust and self-preservation. "We're done here," Sterling said. "What?" Dad shouted. "You're my lawyer. Destroy her." "I can't represent you, Robert," Sterling said, packing his briefcase. "You swore to me the books were clean. You tried to use this lawsuit to cover up a felony. If I stay, I'm an accomplice to fraud. Get yourself a criminal defense attorney. You're going to need one." Sterling walked out. I was left alone with my father and brother. The dynamic had shifted instantly. The predators were now the prey. "Helen," Dad's voice trembled. "You called the IRS? Do you know what you've done? They'll freeze everything. They'll seize the house, your mother's car." "You froze my account first, Dad," I said coldly. "You tried to starve me. You tried to ruin my marriage. You tried to take my freedom. Did you think I would just lay down and die?" "We can fix this," Kevin pleaded, tears running down his face. "Helen, tell them it was a mistake. Tell them you were confused. Please, I can't go to jail. I'm too young." "You should have thought about that before you spent the driver's healthcare money on Bitcoin," I said. I stood up. "The settlement offer is on the last page. You liquidate the remaining assets. You pay me my 20% equity from whatever is left after the IRS takes their cut. And you sign a public admission that the rumors you spread about me were lies." "And if we don't?" Dad asked, looking small and defeated. "Then I see you at the criminal trial as a witness for the prosecution." I walked out of that room feeling lighter than I had in years. The heavy cloak of their expectations, their judgment, their toxic control, it was all gone. But the war wasn't over. A wounded animal is dangerous, but a trapped animal is unpredictable. The fallout was swift and brutal. Mr. Sterling's resignation from their case triggered a panic. The news of the IRS investigation leaked. Trucking is a small world, and bad news travels faster than a speeding semi. Miller Logistics collapsed not with a bang, but with a whimper. Vendors stopped delivering fuel. The internet and phone lines were cut for non-payment. The few remaining drivers quit, parking their trucks in the yard and tossing the keys into the dirt. But Dad refused to sign the settlement. His pride was a cancer that had metastasized too deep. He convinced himself that he could still win, that he could charm the judge, that he was Robert Miller and the rules didn't apply to him. So we went to court, not for the lawsuit they filed against me, that was dismissed immediately for lack of merit, but for my countersuit for unpaid wages and breach of contract. The courtroom was sterile and cold. My mother sat in the back row, clutching a rosary, looking at me with eyes full of hate. She hadn't called to apologize. She was praying for my defeat. Dad took the stand. He wore his best suit, but it hung loosely on him. He had lost 20 pounds in a month. Mr. Miller, Janet asked, pacing in front of the witness box. Did you or did you not sign an employment agreement granting Helen Miller 20% equity after 10 years? It was an informal understanding, Dad lied, trying to use his charm on the judge. It was contingent on good behavior. Helen became difficult. Difficult? Janet raised an eyebrow. Is increasing revenue by 200% over a decade considered difficult? She undermined her brother, Dad shouted, losing his composure. She was jealous. She wanted to be the man of the house. Objection, Janet said calmly. Relevance. Sustained, the judge said, peering over her glasses at Dad. Mr. Miller, answer the question. Did the contract exist? Yes, Dad gritted his teeth, but I fired her before the date, so it's void. You fired her? Janet turned to the jury. We had requested a jury trial, knowing they would hate him. 6 days before the vesting date, after she refused to participate in tax fraud initiated by your son. Is that correct? It wasn't fraud. It was creative accounting, Dad yelled. A collective gasp went through the courtroom. He had just admitted it on public record. Then came the receipts. We played the recording Martha had legally made during a board meeting I wasn't invited to. Voice of Kevin on tape. Just move the tax money to the crypto account. If the IRS asks, we'll say Helen messed up the books before she left. She's the fall guy, Dad. Nobody will believe a disgruntled daughter. Fine. Just make sure the paperwork looks messy so we can claim incompetence. I looked at Mom in the back row. She stopped praying. She went pale. She had known. She had to have known. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. When they returned, the foreman stood up. He didn't look at Dad. He looked at me with a nod of respect. We find in favor of the plaintiff, Helen Miller. We award full damages for the breach of contract. We also award punitive damages for defamation and emotional distress. The gavel banged. It sounded like a gunshot, ending a long, painful war. The judge looked at Dad. Mr. Miller, I am also forwarding the transcript of this trial to the district attorney's office. You have admitted to federal crimes in my courtroom. I suggest you don't leave town. I stood up. Dad slumped in his chair, burying his face in his hands. Kevin was shaking, staring at the floor. I walked past them. I wanted to say something. I wanted to say, I told you so. I wanted to scream. But as I looked at them, broken, exposed, and pathetic, I realized they weren't worth my breath. They were just strangers who used to know me. CT2. You are amazing for sticking with me through this battle. Justice is sweet, isn't it? If you are cheering for this victory, please hit the like button and comment the number 1 below. Let me know you're on the side of truth. Your support tells YouTube to share this story with other women who need to see it. Comment 1 now. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright sunlight. Mark was waiting for me. Big Mike was waiting there too, standing next to his rig, which he had illegally parked on the street just to show support. We won? Mike asked. We won, I smiled. Good, Mike spat on the ground. Now let's go move some freight. We got work to do. I got into my car, not as a daughter, not as a victim, but as the CEO of Phoenix Logistics. I had burned the bridge, and the light from the flames showed me exactly where I needed to go. 1 year later, I parked my car in the lot of the new Phoenix Logistics headquarters. It wasn't a rented office in an industrial park anymore. It was the building my father used to own. When Miller Logistics went into liquidation, the bank seized everything. The trucks, the warehouse, the office. They put it all up for auction. No one wanted the building. It had bad juju, people said. It was a monument to failure. But I saw it differently. I saw the bones of the place where I learned my trade. I saw the potential, so I bought it for pennies on the dollar. I walked into the lobby. The hustle sign was long gone. In its place was a simple, elegant logo of a phoenix rising. The walls were painted a calm blue. The air smelled of fresh coffee and productivity. I walked past the dispatch board. It was lit up like a Christmas tree. We had 40 trucks on the road now. Eleanor Vance was still our biggest client, but we had 10 others just as large. I greeted my staff. Lisa, the receptionist, was now the office manager. Sam, the driver Kevin couldn't pay, was my fleet director. Martha, who had come out of retirement, was my CFO. We were a team of misfits and cast-offs who had built an empire out of spite and competence. As for the family, justice, when it finally landed, was heavy. The IRS didn't accept creative accounting as an excuse. Dad and Kevin were charged with tax evasion, wire fraud, and conspiracy. To save himself, Kevin turned on Dad. He cut a deal, testifying that Dad had masterminded the whole thing and forced him to go along with it. It was one final act of cowardice from the golden child. Dad was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. He lost the house, the cars, his reputation, and his freedom. He sits in a cell now, likely telling anyone who will listen that his ungrateful daughter ruined him. He still doesn't get it. He ruined himself. I just refuse to pay the bill. Kevin got probation and a heavy fine, but he is unhireable. The last I heard, he was working at a car wash in another state, living in a studio apartment. No more BMWs, no more CEO titles, just him and the consequences of his mediocrity. Mom moved into a small condo. She sends me letters sometimes. They usually start with, "I pray for you," and end with a request for money. I don't open them. I put them in a box marked "The Past." I walked into my office, the corner office that used to be Dad's, then Kevin's. I had changed everything. The heavy mahogany desk was gone, replaced by modern glass. The dark curtains were open, letting the light flood in. I sat down and looked at the photo on my desk. It was me and Mark at our wedding. We had gotten married 3 months ago. No drama, no family table, just people who actually loved us. My phone rang. It was a new potential client. "This is Helen," I answered. "Hi, is this Helen Miller, the owner?" "Yes," I said, savoring the word. "This is the owner." I realized then that the inheritance I was so desperate for wasn't the money or the company. The real inheritance was the resilience I built while trying to survive them. They gave me nothing, and in doing so, they gave me everything I needed to become who I am. I looked out the window at the trucks lining up at the loading dock. My trucks, my drivers, my legacy. I wasn't the unpaid housekeeper anymore. I wasn't the assistant. I was the phoenix. And I had finally learned that you don't need to wait for a seat at the table. You can build your own table, and you can choose who gets to sit with you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to relive, but I hope it proves that no matter how much people try to diminish you, your value is real. You are strong, you are capable, and you are not alone. Bye for now.